And I'm going to pass over to Liv, who will kick off the training.
Cool. Hi, welcome everyone to the Societies and Sports Core Officer Training. Thank you for joining us, and we'll get started with introductions. So I'm Liv, and I'm Vice President of Student Experience, and I'm elected Sabbatical Officer, and I work with the activities team at the SU. And we've got Jack Parker, who is the Student Activities Coordinator, who's co-presenting today with me. We also have Ray, who is the Student Activities Manager for Societies, who's going to be working on the chat function today if you've got any questions as we go through, but we will have an open Q&A at the end. And then also within the team, we've got Dominic King, who's the Student Activities Manager of Sport, and we've got Rob Neal, who's the Student Activities Coordinator. We've got Summer, who's another Student Activities Coordinator, but works a lot on the B team stuff. And then we have Nicola, who is the Reception Manager. So if any of you don't know, SU Reception's on Square 3. If you ever need to go in, help for loads of stuff. And then we've got Mike, who is an administrator who works in reception as well too. So yeah, a bit more about my role. So as I said, I'm elected Sabbatical Officer. So my role is to represent all students who are part of the Blades, who are part of societies, volunteering, Rebel, which is our student media outlet, Just Play, which is about engagement, and also RAG, which stands for Raising and Giving. So a bit of stuff from across the board, and part of my role is to work with the SU activities team, because a lot of those areas are activities, but also the sabbatical team, who are other elected officers, and I represent all students in those areas, but also we're trustees for the Students' Union as it is a charity. Part of my role, I work with university staff, so I sit on the Essex Sports Board, who are the big decision makers behind sport at the university, and I also sit on Student Experience Committee, and Safeguard Advisory Group, which is slightly less fun, but that is just part of my role in sitting on that is representing you guys and passing information through and how we can make positive change. So as you can only run as sabbatical officer 2 years, and this is my second year in the role, then it'll be up for election in the sabbatical elections next February. So throughout the year, if you're interested, got any questions about my role, I'm really here happy to help and work with you all. And something that's slightly different to last year, if this is your second year as a committee member, is now that big events can happen and we're all back on campus, I really want to be at your events and come along. And because there's no capacity restrictions, I won't be taking up that valuable sixth spot, you know, that was limiting at training and club sessions last year. But please send me all these calendar events about events you've got going on, training sessions, showcases, all that stuff. I want to know what's going on, just to come along. I can't promise I'll be at all of them, but I would definitely rather be at one of your events than some other university meetings. So please do let me know, and I'll do my very best to come along and experience it all with you. But that's enough about me. If we go to the next bit, perfect.
Cool. So yeah, who are we? So a bit more kind of about us as a department. So we help to enable you to put on your events, compete in your competitions, carry out your training, do your volunteering sort of opportunities, and a lot more. This training basically is designed to kind of give you a flavour of what your role involves as an exec core officer. We hope that this plus all the other sessions coming up are going to give you the tools really to be kind of as independent as possible. We kind of want to help to facilitate bigger events, or even just some of the kind of the more boring admin side of things. That's our job. We want to help to facilitate you putting on bigger events and doing all the exciting stuff. But these training sessions do include a lot of really key information, bits of information. And a lot of the questions that we get asked by exec members year on year, especially in the first few weeks after the training sessions, the answers are often all usually in the training sessions. So, you know, please take a note of these things. If there's something you're not quite sure about, please do ask us in the chat or ask us at the end of the session. Obviously, if you have questions after, we're always here to answer the questions for you. That's what our role is. That's what our job is. But, you know, if you feel like doing it, then it's always good to have a look at these sessions after. Again, as I said, these will be uploaded onto the website, and we'll be sending out a link to them. So, you know, at some point over the next few weeks, maybe just recap again So yeah, cool. So what are your roles? So you guys here today are presidents, vice presidents, that's for sports, secretaries, treasurers, welfare officers, and COVID officers. And together, you guys have the primary responsibility for your club or your society's day-to-day running. You must attend all of your exec committee meetings, so they're the ones that you organise, together with any and all activities, student activities, general meetings that we organise, whether that's Blades committee meetings or just societies meeting. We normally kind of try and group them as much as possible now, but you have to attend those. Yeah, you must attend any other meetings that are by us that are compulsory. Sometimes we'll have information ones, but ones like this, for example, this is a compulsory session, so you need to be here for this, which obviously you are, which is great. And obviously watch back the recordings if you're unable to attend. Sometimes, and as is the case with the finance training, which I think we mentioned again a little bit later, with the finance training this year, if you are unable to make that, there will be a little bit of a quiz that you'll have to do. It's like a type form thing. It's not ideal. Obviously, we know we don't really want to have to do that, but it involves a lot of legal information. So we just need to be sure that you guys are as equipped as possible to go into the academic year with the correct knowledge. It's also going to be your responsibility along with your COVID officers. So obviously some of you here might be a COVID officer, but if you're not, then it will be your responsibility to work with the COVID officer to keep up to date with the regulations surrounding COVID-19. So checking any email updates from us, keeping up to date with government advice. We're not asking you to kind of pay attention to everyday news because that can be very, very draining and very tiring. But just sort of check in every once in a while with government guidelines or any guidelines from us, just to see what you need to be doing to keep your events safe. Cool, Liv.
Cool. So the president, I won't call them the most important role, but they're probably one of the key roles that you'll have in either your club or society, and they are the main point of contact for not just your members, but for us when we need to send out information. So your members will expect, as a club society, to give them regular updates about all type of information. So the president's role is making sure that information is going out. You may have a comms officer or roles in between, but the president's in charge of making sure the whole club or society know what's going on. And from our side, you'll usually be our first point of contact within the student activities team. So definitely check your emails. It'll either be from the Blades, SOCS account, or mine, which is VP Experience. And these will normally be important emails about information you'd need to know or key dates and stuff. So definitely keep checking those and do open them. So within that, we'll also have any social media pages. So we've got ours that we keep up to date with information, but if you do have a social media platform, make sure these are kept up to date. You may get students who start following them throughout the year, so making sure they're active and they know that they're the right accounts to be following. But also not all your members may be following social media, so you can't just rely on that with giving out key updates through the website, and this will be covered more in the comms training later this week. But through the website, you can get a mailing list, and that is all the members who have signed up to your club or society. So making sure you're using those platforms as well as they're everyone who's interested. So not just leaving it all to social media, which we know is sometimes the easiest way. Fundamentally, your role as president is that you're responsible for making the big calls and the big decisions, whether that's on events or whether if there's between your committee there's a time you need a final decision maker. It is down to your president as the key representative of your club and society. So yeah, but you also need to work with your committee team as you are a group to work together to carry out any requests. Don't just do all the work yourself as president. It can be very easy to do that, but pass it out. There are people with specific role titles, and we'll go into the core ones today, but your committee will extend at times further than just the core roles, and they're able to help too. So work together, but your role as president is the main point of contact as well. So you're also jointly responsible along with the treasurer for all the budgeting and spending money. It's not just left up to one person as the treasurer. So as president, you'll equally be as responsible for that. So, the money side's really important. Members want to feel like they're getting value for money at the end of the day. So making sure the service you're providing is representative of that and the money's going in a good direction. That's part of your role. And you're also responsible for the fact that you don't break any laws. We'll get on to that in a bit, but it shouldn't be a big problem, but that is part of what your role is. So below the president, you've got either a vice president or secretary. We know they call them slightly different things between clubs and societies, but your role is being responsible for note taking. So you'll probably have a few committee meetings. We recommend you have them quite regularly. It keeps you all up to date. You can share information we've sent out, but also you get a representative of how your committee and exec are feeling, your members are feeling, but also it's really useful in planning events, having everyone down at a certain time. So vice president, secretary, you need to be taking the notes for these and also circulating these to your members, as they won't be in those calls, but they want to know what's going on, what's coming up. And it's really crucial for your event planning to know when certain dates are coming up, but also the actions that need doing. If you wait every 2 weeks to check in with everyone, you know, nothing will get done. And we know what loads of you want to put loads of stuff on, because we can this year. So just in between, following up with actions, general stuff like that. You'll also be the person who's in charge of making sure your standards and awards applications are in, which will be a fun bit come term 2. There'll be a separate training session on awards. But I'd definitely recommend downloading the document for standards and using it as sort of a checklist throughout the year, so you're not scrambling last minute at the end of term 2 to do X, Y, Z, just following it throughout the year, checking that you're on track, deciding as a committee what your goal is for the year, and little and often is the best way around that. You'll also play a crucial role making sure that your fellow committee and exec members have carried out their tasks. That leads back to actions, but not just leaving it up to them. Your role is a supportive role as well. So if they're struggling for whatever reason, you know, just checking in with them. Can you help? Can anyone else in your committee help? Not just chasing someone, but checking that, you know, everything's getting done and helping the best we can. And finally, your role is about liaising with COVID officers or whoever's in charge with your social media, making sure relevant posts are up to date, information's up to date, making sure that your members are following these accounts with the information and checking it, but also following up what protocols are needed for events, competitions, training sessions. Won't go into too much detail as there are separate sessions in our training program, but just checking that you're on top of everything. I guess that's the one word to describe the vice president and secretary.
Cool. So the treasurers, so you guys are responsible, along with your president, for budgeting and spending any money that you've got. One thing we do recommend is to create like a budget proposal for your society or your club, and then just presenting this to your members. So, you know, that way they can take a look at what you plan to spend, query it, suggest different things to spend money on, or even just suggesting like altering certain budgets for certain things. You know, you're, as we said on a few slides ago, I think it was, your members should be at the heart of what you're doing this for. You shouldn't be doing anything just because the exec committee feels like it. It should all be done for your members. So it's good to get them involved in the planning and approval of what your budget and what you intend to spend your money on. You've got to make sure that anything that you do plan for is done really carefully, so that you never overspend. We don't just have money that we can use to subsidize stuff. If you go over budget, we'll make sure that fundraising is done to cover that money back. So yeah, you guys are responsible just for making sure that everything is budgeted really, really well, so that you won't ever get into any problems. You'll also be responsible for paying money into the SU for your club or your society, as well as signing off expense claims, which we'll talk a bit more about in the finance training, which I think is tomorrow. Obviously, that's unless the claim is yours, and then in which case the president will sign it off. Obviously, we trust you guys, but there might be one or two people that, you know, want to put their own expense through and then sign it off if they could do that. So yeah.
Cool. So the welfare officer's role is around ensuring that your society and club is a safe and welcoming space for anyone, regardless of age, race, sexuality, gender, or disability. Probably, you know, quite explanatory there. It's about being inclusive and making sure that you're running the best way possible. But you're not to take all that responsibility on yourself. So familiarise yourself with the different services that can help to support students. So that could be student support, SU advice. SU advice you can contact online, via email, or they're downstairs on Square 3. But your role partly is to be signposting. You're not counsellors. We're not asking you as welfare officers to be the only point of contact, but your role should be signposting and getting students where needed to go and seek professional advice if anything does come up within your club or society. You will be their main point of contact if anyone wishes to make a complaint within your club or society, so it's your role to follow that stuff up and go through it with individuals. But your role should focus on helping to create and create de-stress events or supporting ones that the SU and university create. So through Welcome, the SU put quite a few events on, and they'll be going on like the What's On part of the website. But we know a lot of events that clubs and societies put on are normally quite high energy, maybe nights out, stuff like that. But making sure there's, other events where it's just getting lunch together or going and watching a play or doing something that's a bit more, I'll call it low energy, and just sort of welcoming full members, because uni can get stressful for between. So just checking up with your members. And this year it's really important that you assist your COVID officer within your club or society, because some members may have not been in social situations for 18 months and everyone's going to have their individual levels of feeling overwhelmed or daunting with coming back onto campus. So definitely check in with these individuals, making sure your events are varied, that, sometimes it is really easy to keep things online and Zoom works really well for some things. I know it'd be really hard for us to do this in a room with people studying all over the place. So, whether you can add some online events if people aren't feeling super comfortable throughout the year, as people might have different levels of comfortability. So that's the welfare officer.
Cool, thank you. On to the really fun stuff now. So COVID.
Jack, your sound's just cut.
How about now?
Perfect.
Right. Don't know why this keeps happening, but never mind. So I was saying on to all the fun stuff now with the COVID officer, but it is a lot shorter than last year, so no need to worry too much. So as a COVID officer, you will need to act as the primary point of contact for all COVID related matters within the SU and the university. You've got to make sure that each session that you run, so whether this be a training event or a fixture or your regular sessions every week, you have to make sure that these are run in line with your approved risk assessments and operating procedures. Clubs might be a little bit more familiar with that, as they've obviously had to be really strict as to restart matches and training sessions again. But with societies or clubs that do sort of events, maybe like in teaching rooms and things, you will also have to be doing risk assessments for all of your events, and that will be covered in the events training that's on. There's 2 sessions on Wednesday, so make sure you attend one of them, because there'll be some really important information in that. Coaches for clubs may also take on this role for their sessions to ensure that all the necessary health and safety procedures are followed. You guys will have to be aware of the government guidelines and COVID-19 related safety, hygiene and social distancing protocols. Obviously, it's a little bit more eased at the moment, but as we've known with this pandemic so far, things can change really quickly. So you have to be on top and alert to any changing guidelines. But obviously we'll help you with that, and we'll let you know of any changes that you need to follow. You have to work with the club and society committee to ensure that each session is compliant with any ongoing guidance. This does mean having to be the negative one maybe at an event to make sure, if any procedures aren't being followed, you will have to step in to make sure they're being followed, just to ensure that we can keep going with the training sessions and fixtures and your regular sessions again, because we all want to get those kick-started again. You have to make sure that all players or members that are attending all these sessions understand the guidelines that they have to comply with. So this can be as simple as sending an email out to all members of an event and just making sure that they know what they need to do, or essentially what they can't do during an event. Like I said, there aren't many restrictions at the moment, but this will be different from club to club and society to society. So yeah, and you just got to ensure that your members feel safe and welcome at all your events. I think Liv mentioned it, but some people, they're going to be less confident about returning to these in-person events. So you've just got to make sure that people don't feel like the odd one out and feel like they're being alienated at these events. Mask wearing is one of the big talking points, and people feel very different about it. So it's just about being mindful of those that still will want to wear masks and those that don't, and making sure that everybody feels safe and welcome at your events. You need to liaise with the SU, the student activity staff, and the Essex sports staff to ensure the compliance of any guidelines or regulation. Yeah, same with what I said about early risk assessments, making sure that you're always following what's in your risk assessments. You'll have to ensure that every session that you do includes a registration period, and we'd suggest having a pre-registration period as well before the session starts. So this can be that anyone that's coming to your event or playing in a match or whatever it might be, they can just email the COVID officer, obviously with their name and email address, which email address will be there because they've emailed you anyway. And they have to know that those details are going to be stored by us on our systems, just to make sure that if we need to let people know that they have to self-isolate or go and get like a PCR test, that's the purpose of why we're going to be holding that information. Like I said earlier, the kind of negative, boring side of it, you're going to have to help with managing the session delivery and movement around your events, making sure that everyone is compliant with whatever guidelines are in place. And essentially kind of telling people off if they're not doing what they need to be. Just one of those things. I know it's going to be difficult to do that at times, but to ensure that we can keep running fixtures and training sessions and your regular events, that's going to have to be the case. And you've got to, really importantly, remind all participants, that's everyone that's coming to your event, even those spectating that are close to the event. Obviously, if you've got people watching at the side of a football pitch, that'll be fine. They don't need to have their details taken. But if it's like in a closed space and there's going to be any spectators, then you need to remind everyone there that they have a responsibility to notify you as the COVID officer if they test positive within 72 hours of attending the event. A little bit complicated, but hopefully this is fairly clear enough. If not, please do ask. A participant or a spectator, like I said, whatever it was, anyone that's been in close contact, they will now only need to self-isolate if they've tested positive for COVID-19, obviously, or if they've been in close contact with someone who has tested positive and they themselves have not received both doses of a UK government recognised vaccination. If someone tests positive on a lateral flow, or has been in close contact with someone who has tested positive, but they've received both doses, then you have to immediately get a PCR test. And if it's negative, you can return to your club or society activity. But obviously, if it's positive, then you have to self-isolate for 10 days, starting as of the day they received their result. Like I said, I hope that's clear. But if not, then I'll go over it again at the end of the session and hopefully get there. That person also has to inform anyone they've been in close contact with in the prior 72 hours, but that's outside of the club remit or the society remit. You just have to let us know if someone has let you know, and then we'll do the work in letting everybody else at that event know that they need to. But you have to remind them that anyone else outside of that event, so if that's their flatmates or whatever, you'd hope that they'd know this already, but it's just good to just remind them that they will need to let their flatmates know, or whoever it might be, that they need to do a lateral flow test and then follow the same steps if that comes back positive. We recommend that all club and society members are taking at least 2 lateral flow tests per week. So again, that's something that if you can, it would be great to let your members know that that's what we are advising. You can get those tests for free off the NHS website, or the government website, sorry, I've left the link there to it. And at the moment, there are still some facilities on campus. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Dom, if you can chuck that in the chat, if you know when they're going to be there until. But at the moment, there are some facilities on campus where you can go and get a test done, obviously for free. Up at the bottom there, the procedures at the moment, they're correct as of the 13th of September. The SU is guided largely on what the university's policies are. We have our space on the university campus, so whatever rules they have, we just have to follow. That is just one of those things. So we're not doing all this stuff to be difficult, and neither is the university. At the end of the day, they're doing it to keep everyone safe. But we will follow whatever guidelines the university give, and that is often dictated by the government as well. So yeah. So a bit more, so the COVID officer will also need to carry out a pre-session health questionnaire on all attendees. It can be really, really simple. It can be at the start of your event. Let's say you're in the Ivor crew. It could be that you stand at the front at the start of it and just say, has anyone, you could just speak to the whole crowd essentially and say, has anyone had these symptoms, and then list off the symptoms. And then if anyone has, they will have to leave the event. You can also do this obviously at the start of the event, so you can stand at the door or the outside of the event room, or at the start before people are going to start their training session, whatever it might be, and ask on a one-to-one basis. That's basically up to you how you want to do that, but it's just about reminding people that if they have experienced any symptoms recently, or they are currently experiencing symptoms, then they need to go home straight away. Kind of important to do as well. Like I said, you think people would know that if they have got some symptoms, they wouldn't turn up, but with all the research that's being done, things like symptoms, they're always constantly changing. So something that is now a symptom might not be what someone thought was a symptom 6 months ago, so they might still not know quite the updated list of them. So it's just really important to do that. The records that you keep with your sign-ups, for example, they have to be kept only as long as necessary, or in line with GDPR requirements. So when people get to your event, they'll have to they'll have to sign in, and this can be as simple as just a name and an email address. And we've got a little template for you that you can use. I think it's on the next slide. There's some details about that. But ideally, you do this straight away on a laptop, so that it's not a piece of paper that someone can take and then sell data. That's essentially what we want to avoid. But then you need to send these or type these up and then send them, ideally as soon as the event is finished, and that's sending it to us either at blades@essex.ac.uk or susocs@essex.ac.uk. But make sure that's just within no longer than 24 hours after the event has finished. Once we email you back to say, yep, we've received this, delete your copy straight away. Essentially, at that point, your job is done. You just then need to let us know if anyone tells you that they have tested positive, and then we will do the rest for you. We will then destroy the information once we no longer need it. So that would be, it can depend varying on how long we need the data. But if anyone ever asks why the data is needed, that is essentially the reason, just for safety. Failure to provide attendance sheets within the 24 hours time frame will result in a suspension of your club or society activities. Again, I know that sounds quite harsh, but it's taken a lot of work by some of the staff members here, especially over on the Blade side, with Liv and Dom, and Rob more recently, with getting all the risk assessments approved. So we have to make sure we're complying with these rules so that these things can continue. So that's why we have to be a little bit strict and sort of really aware on those things. If for any reason you do need to keep this record of attendance, it has to be approved by us, and then kept in a password protected document for a maximum of 21 days. So if you do need to put, if you are going to keep that, please make sure you send it to us before you set the password up. Otherwise, we're going to have to then go back to you again and try and get the password, and then it's going to take longer in case we ever need to let someone know that they need to isolate or whatnot. So just a key thing to note there. So just to kind of run through that again really quickly, or if you want to come back to this as your kind of base to know what you need to do. So the event process is at the start of the event, or even before the start of the event, ask attendees to provide their name and @essex.ac.uk address. And that before, like I said, that can be done by emailing the COVID officer. You'll keep that final registration list on a document, and then any paper copies will be destroyed immediately. And then you email that to us, and then the email will just clearly state which society or club that list is for, as well as when and where the event took place. And then as soon as we've said we've got it, you destroy the document, and then let us know as soon as someone lets you know that someone has that they have tested positive for COVID-19. And then I believe the last bit about COVID officer for now. If you're COVID officer, if you're the COVID officer and you're not going to be present during a club or society session, which is highly likely, you have a lot of events and you're not going to be able to get to any one, then someone else has to assume that position. They have to take on those responsibilities for the duration of the session, as well as being the person that sends us the attendance list. Essentially, you can view it as an event by event, sort of thing. If one person is taking the lead on it, then you will be the only person that does that event. Don't sort of then pass it all back on to the COVID officer. Just to keep things simple, whoever is leading that session as the COVID officer, you will do everything involved in that session as the COVID officer. If your society or club does not yet have a designated COVID officer, you're just going to need to email us to nominate someone, and then they need to go through this training, so they make sure they pick up this bit of information. If there is like only one person interested in doing that, then at the moment you can just email us and then they can be basically confirmed into the role. We need to just get those positions filled. But obviously if there's more than one person that wants to do that, well, then we'll need to hold an election online. If you can't find anyone and like you are, perhaps you're a president, you can also take that role of COVID officer, and then maybe just do that until you can find someone else to do it. So yeah, just make sure you get someone nominated and let us know. And as I said, we've created a template for the attendance registers that you can use. So if anyone knows the exec members resources page that we've got, then you can find it under that little button that the arrow is pointing to. Or likewise, you can download this presentation when we send it out, or when we upload it to the website rather, and then you can click on that link and it will download for you. Cool. That went on for a long time, so I do apologise, but Liv, back to you.
Cool. So documentation, there are going to be key documents this year that you'll need to sign and send back, just important for running your club and society. But what we've been working on for this year is getting it all channeled through DocuSign. So you literally, once you read them, you can add your signature to it and it sends it all back, stops all the faff with loads of different documents and emails. So later this week, we'll get them all, or later in a few weeks, we'll get them all sort of sent out to you for you to sign and send back. So just a rundown of what the forms you'll see are. So we've got the terms of reference. You just need to read this. This is just fundamentally about your operation and things to go back to during the year. Your code of conduct will need to be signed, and that's just making sure you adhere to it throughout the year. The same with the constitutions. You'll need to fill these in, as these can be customizable to your club or society. You may have different things that you sort of require or would like from your members. So if you want to hold your members to that, get it in your constitution and have that signed, and we can update that for you. You'll need to do the declaration of financial responsibility. This is really important when it comes to all the money involved. There's also the alcohol policy, which is really important that read and signed, and then your social media charter. Now, these probably aren't the most thrilling of documents to read, but they are really important as the core officers, or at least somebody goes through these, as we need to make sure that you're aware of what the policies are that you're going to be held to, and that you're also abiding by the law. I don't think any of you will go out and be lawless with it, but you need to adhere to these things for legal reasons, and we don't want anything happening. So just make sure you give them definitely a read through, and they're bits of safe practice at the end of the day, and we'll cover everything that you do throughout the year. Okay, a little bit less fun than the documents, but just about disciplinary procedures. So if for any case there is any conflict that comes up, we're not saying it will, we're just mentioning it now to prepare you in case it does. So if there is any conflict, our first piece of advice would be to reach out to the individual for mediation, and to do this on a one-to-one basis. You don't want to call them into a full committee meeting and you all sat on one side of the table and them on the other, and it be quite accusatory. That's not what we want. We want this to feel like an open talk conversation, really informal, but just sort of understanding more of what the backstory is. There's always two sides of something, but really find out if it's that someone's not completing their role. They may have other things going on. We know uni gets really busy, and especially with family stuff in the last few years being really chaotic. Just make sure you're meeting with that individual, finding out what's going on. So like, refrain from using accusatory language. I don't think any of you would, but please just think about what you'd say. Would you like, if you were on the other foot, would you like to hear it back? Just sort of think about it. And then fact find is, the individual may be facing challenges that are affecting them right now, but what you can do to sort of help them perform their role, and get to the bottom of that issue. And, on a one-to-one basis, really informal, situation. If for whatever reason, following the informal meeting, there's still no positive changes and it's getting to the point where it's affecting maybe what you're able to perform as a committee and getting to what your goals are with putting on events, or what you want to achieve throughout the year, you should then call a formal meeting, and that will include a member of the student activities team. staff. So contact us through the Blades and Society's email, but also you can copy me in. It's VP Experience, and a member of staff will come along to follow it up more formally. And it's really key that if you are going to take that step, you let us know in advance so we can do our best in following it through, as that's in line with the Constitution and Code of Conduct. And if there are any issues within your club or society that involves bullying or harassment of any kind, there is a zero tolerance policy here. So you need to go straight to SU advice and student support to follow that up if a member of the university is taking part in bullying or harassment. There is zero tolerance policy, and that's something we take really seriously, though we don't think there'll be any problems this year, and we strongly hope none of you have to go through this, but at least now you know what to do if, heaven forbids, it comes up. Cool, let's move on. Okay, another fun slide. Jack, you can take this one.
Yep. Yeah, so really simple, but if you're ever unsure whether something that you're doing is on the right side of the law, please just ask us. It's often, if you're not sure, it probably isn't going to be legal. So just best to ask us and check. Societies or clubs, you can never open your own bank accounts. Again, this is something we'll go over again more detail in finance training. When you get your own weekly finance reports, it does kind of look like you've got your own bank account, but it's not. It's basically just a subsection within the SUs. Yeah, but I won't bore you with that now. We'll go through that tomorrow. You also can't agree to sponsorships or contracts without them being agreed to by someone in our team first. It has to be a member of staff that signs this off. You can never sign this off yourself. This is any agreement. The example I used earlier, for example, is if you are in contact on Facebook Messenger with like a clothing supplier, and you've said you want 30 hoodies with all these different names on the back, and you've ever said the word, if someone says, "Are you happy for us to start this order?" and you say yes, that's an agreement, and they will start making those hoodies. They don't know the way we work. They just believe that you are the one making those decisions, and that it's fine for them. They'll start making those hoodies, and then all of a sudden they are angry because we can't authorize it for some reason. 9 times out of 10, we can authorize payments. We're able to sign off on contracts or sponsorships, but sometimes we can't, and then we don't want that company taking us to court because we owe them. They feel we owe them, £500 because they've got stock that cannot be used anymore. So just always be mindful when you're discussing anything that involves any sort of agreement. It's fine to say that it all sounds good, but just always be aware that it's going to have to be us that signs off on these things. And this can also just be to do with a conflict of interest. One of the examples I always give is you might get a lettings agent from town somewhere. They might come to you and say, "We'll give you £500 if you share our company on your social media platforms." And that sounds great, but unfortunately we have SU Homes, which is a similar, well, it's a lettings agent essentially. So we wouldn't authorize that because it's a conflict of interest. So yeah. Elections. So elections can happen at any point during the year. So that's like if you decide to create a new position, or if someone leaves their role and you need to fill it. We also know that obviously it's been a bit of a difficult time in the last 18 months or so with filling positions, because everything's been online, so people might not have been as invested or got as involved in your clubs or societies. So there might be some positions at the moment that still need filling. You can find the terms of reference for societies, and then obviously the different one for clubs as well, and they will give you their breakdown of how you can hold these elections. If there's any core officer position, it will need to be done online. Non-core roles can be done online as well if you want them to, but there are some different and perhaps probably easier ways that you'd find to elect people into these positions. So make sure you have a read of that. The general elections happen every academic year around February, March time. It's compulsory that every society and every club takes part. And if your positions aren't occupied after the 2 rounds, if the core positions that is, then your society or club could become dormant. Obviously, the last set of elections, we sort of did everything we can to help those survive. And like I said, at the moment, we're still left with some unfilled positions within committees. But ideally, yeah, if If no positions are filled, obviously then the society or the club will close, unfortunately. But yeah, to just try and make sure to across this whole academic year, just make sure to kind of start planting those seeds, start telling people about elections as soon as you can, get people kind of involved in certain decision making that aren't on the exec team, because that will sort of put them in that position to feel a little bit more confident about perhaps running for a role at a later point and ensuring that your club or your society keeps running for years to come. As I said, the core officer roles have got to be done online. We'll help you to do that. So nearer the time, we'll ask you to confirm, what positions you want to be available in your elections, and then we'll set that all up for you and send out the communications regarding that. You're allowed to endorse candidates. So if you are a president and you think that person X will be a really good president and they'll be better than the other person that's running, you can endorse them. That's your decision, but we usually advise just not to do it so that you can avoid conflict. But there might be times when you want to do it, and that's totally up to you. And the positions that you hold currently, you'll hold them until the 31st of July next year, unless all of the people who are elected, like newly elected, and you guys agree to having that handover earlier, and you need to all agree on that. It can't be that one person on the current exec team is left all with the new exec team. It has to be that everyone agrees, and then you can start that handover earlier. And that sometimes happens. That's fine to do. We can help with that process as well. But yeah, and that is the resources page. Hopefully you know where that is already. But like I said, you can download this session. We will send out a link to this probably tomorrow. I'll once I've uploaded this stuff all to YouTube and done everything that I need to do, I'll send you the link to this over email so that you know where to find all the training sessions as they get uploaded. And yeah, back to Liv.
Cool. So this is a really interesting year, as even though we've called this welcoming first years, this also includes first years to your club or society. Many students who'll be entering their second year haven't experienced that full first year experience with events happening on campus and really getting involved and going to training and going to meetings and stuff like that. So you won't just be, when it comes to your communication and going out to new members, remember they're not just first years with their first year as an Essex student, it's also their first years with that full experience. So first and second years, but also we know that in any year, third years, master students, anyone can join at any time. But there'll be more members who you'll find through recruiting this year as they weren't able to get involved because of the pandemic. So we know from years past that it can be quite intimidating joining. The process of going to your first meeting, going to your first training session can be quite daunting for those, and especially after a year of COVID where no one's been able to do anything, it might feel like a bigger step for new members. So this is important thing just to taking control. If you can, finding the grass pitches or Studio One or LTB6, wherever you're going to have your events or training sessions, can be quite complicated. So maybe think you're going to meet them on Square 3 or by a key point where they can find each other, meeting them beforehand, bringing them over to your events. The language you use at many universities, for instance, joining a sports club or being part of a society is really competitive, and you have to be, an elite level debater to join the debate society, or you've got to be, an Olympic level swimmer to join the swimming club. We know at Essex, we're really proud on how inclusive we are and that we accommodate to every level. So make sure you're using that wording when you're promoting your club at Freshers Fair or online during social media, reminding people that you cater to all abilities. It may be stuff you already know, but as a new member, they may not. So just reducing the barriers for someone to come and join, because you don't want it to be that thing of turning up that puts somebody off, as they could be a really key member and really, a great member to have in your club or society this year. It's also time to start planning. We know there's a few weeks ahead of term, but time goes by so quickly. So start thinking about what your first social events are going to be for the year, but also, plan term one, then it's off your to-do list and you've got it all set up. So, what are your first events going to be? Start publishing those, whether it's putting on the What's On page or through your social channels, key events that people can do, making them as easy for people to get involved in again, but making sure that they feel welcome and engaged. Additionally to that, I know term doesn't start till October, but a lot of students this year who are from red list countries have currently been isolating and doing their quarantine now. I can tell you from being on campus myself, there's a lot more people around, but also if people are isolating, if you can put on an online event now, they've probably got a lot of free time on their hands as they're not able to do much else. So, you know, you could do some online events now, which could be, you know, Netflix watch parties or online tournaments, even just a Zoom drop-in session, little question. You could collaborate together if you know, there are similar clubs or societies, you know, joint events. Make use of this extra time now where, you know, all students have got their Essex email, so they're starting to unlock their membership online and are joining pages. So utilize this time now if you want to put on a low profile, low stress on you guys event, but it could really help with your recruitment ahead of term starting. Also, students, again, may not feel comfortable coming to big in-person things as well. Again, you know, everyone's different levels of comfortability. Not everything has to be in person and face-to-face. Yes, we've all missed that, and it'll be really good to have everything in person and face-to-face, but what steps can you put in place? You know, can you do your event outside? You know, that make people feel a bit more comfortable, you know, masks on, or even just online holding events. Sometimes things work a lot better. I know, you know, even these training sessions work a lot better on Zoom. That's something that will be kept. So some of your events you did last year may have really worked. I know some of you did like tournaments of games and all sorts of stuff then. And then we also ask that on social media and at Freshers Fair, you promote the Yumi app. If any of you don't know, it is a social media app only for Essex students. So you sign up with your @Essex email. The comms for that have gone out to all first years already, so quite a few of them are on it. But you match with people through your interests or the courses that you're on, and you know, that's where you can find people who are interested in origami, for instance, because they put that down. So you're going to match with people who would be interested in your society, and you can start signposting or finding your members there. But also first years might feel a bit daunted coming in, so if they've got a couple questions, you know, we all know that Sub-Zero is the best place to go out, you know, sharing useful bits of information, stuff to bring to uni, you know, just connecting with first years. But it's not just first years on the app, you'll find other people there too. So just a mention of that app. And then Freshers Fair is on Saturday, the 9th of October. It will be in the Multi-Zec car park, the same as last year, because weather-wise, it means less stress for if it does start torrentially raining from previous years. Squares isn't covered in the same way. But if you were there last year, it is going to be very different experience too, as we don't have to be socially distanced and you can hand things out, and there's definitely a lot more that's gone into the atmosphere and the aesthetic of the Multi-Zec. So don't worry, it'll be a different experience, but just a drier experience for all members too, as no one can ever guarantee the weather for Freshers Fair. If you're, so there's a type form that will be going out around the stallholder agreement form, and once you've got this, please email it back to the Socks or Blades account. You just need to fill this in just so we can guarantee your spot for the Freshers Fair.
Sorry, I forgot to edit that from earlier. Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be coming out soon. You'll see an email, so check your inboxes this week. And we can't then guarantee a space if you've not signed it and got back in contact with us. So please make sure you do, because Freshers Fair is the main recruitment event of the term and even the year. So you don't want to miss out on that, as your new members will be looking for you, and that's where you'll find your new members as well. And it's just a great social event on campus. If you would like any bigger activity spaces, we know sometimes people put little events or showcase pieces on, you'll need a slightly bigger space than just a table. So if you haven't already, please let us know by Friday the 17th of September, that is this Friday, so we can make sure you have that space. If not, we can't guarantee anything, so please do get in contact by Friday. And just be aware there'll be no power sources available, and you'll not be permitted to play music unless given specific permission just as there'll be other bits going on at the fair. And there will be a separate exec training on it on Thursday the 23rd via Zoom at 2 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So if you've got any more questions about Freshers Fair, please make sure you're at that session on next Thursday.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so the other training sessions, I will kind of flick between these once we've got through the whole training session again. But just, you know, for you to reference, just if you, in case you haven't got all of the invites, hopefully you should have received all of the invites for these through Outlook. But if you haven't, then yeah, I will go through these just quickly again at the end. I said it before, but if you have, if a session is being run more than once, that is the finance training, events training, and obviously this one today, but we've already done the other one earlier. It's only one that you have to attend. They would just be the same session. You can attend both if you want. But yeah, and I've already mentioned about the finance training, if you can't attend, what will need to be done. Online events planner, so something last year that we got some feedback about was sort of having a bit more of an easy resource to see when certain things are going to happen. So whether that be obviously like Freshers Fair, or whether it be winter night market, if we are able to do that again this year, things like that. We're now going to have this Google sheet that you can all have a look at. You can't edit it as a student, but if you've got anything big in terms of events, then please do just let us know and we can add them onto this this document. So that might be things like Chinese New Year, or you know, the theatre arts pantomime, things kind of like that, which are the, you know, sort of bigger one-off events, rather than, because we're not going to be able to put, unfortunately, every like weekly meeting, those kind of things on there. But this is sort of, yeah, an easy place where we can get all of our events into one place, so that you guys know about as much as possible. That's essentially it. So yeah, thank you for attending. If you haven't got any questions, please feel free to leave and enjoy your evening now. As I said, this session has been a chance to kind of give you the bare bones of what you need, not quite the bare bones, but give you the basic information that you need to succeed in your roles. But obviously, you will need to come to the other sessions for more in-depth things. So finance training is a really important one. Events training is a really, really important one. So please make sure you do attend them. If any of the questions you've got are specifically about finance or events, then please feel free to ask them now, but you might also want to ask them in the other sessions, because or they might be answered in the other sessions. There is a little link there to the exec Facebook group. So now it's just your chance, well, not now obviously, but when you are able to download this, that's your chance to request to join, and we will accept that request, and you can use that to ask questions, to get updates from us, because we post stuff there too. But yeah, so apart from that, thank you very much, and enjoy your evening.